Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ice Cold Takes podcast. I'm your host, Joey DeMeglio, and this week I'm joined by Joe Fortunato. You may know him from Blueshirt Banter, where he's the managing editor. Pretty big blog, Blueshirt Banter. I've read my fair share of articles from you guys over the years. Today we'll talk about those two frustrating losses the Rangers had to the Oilers and the Devils, where they blew multi-goal leads. And we'll talk a little bit about the win over the Senators from last night. Joe, thanks for joining. How are you?
I'm good, man. Anytime. Happy to be here. How are you doing?
Doing great. So I wanted to ask you, so Blue Shirt Banter, one of the top fan sites in terms of Rangers content out there. How did that all start? Were you the one that created the site?
No. It's funny because I was just talking about this with somebody the other day. It's been a while. I mean, I think I started at Blue Shirt Banter in 2009. I was in college, and back then, SB Nation was just SB Nation. It wasn't part of Vox, and they would like buy websites, and that was how they like integrated them into their umbrella, if you will. And they were trying to buy, I think it was like rangersnation.net or something, if my memory serves me correctly. And that didn't work. And someone who was like an assistant editor for the Giants website was a Rangers fan. They gave him the website. He started it. About a week in, he realized he couldn't do it by himself. I had like a WordPress blog about the Rangers way back when. He found me on there. We joined up, we teamed up, and the rest was history. And I think in 2011, I took over the site as managing editor. And it's been a little crazy since then. The site definitely took off, got a little bit bigger than we ever thought it would. I joke about it. I remember staying awake the first day that we had 1,000 people come to the website. I was in the library at Quinnipiac. And now obviously those numbers are a little bit bigger. So it's just, it goes by quick.
Yeah, everybody starts somewhere. I mean, we always talk about Greg and Ryan's podcast and stuff, like how they've been going for such a long time, and it's kind of similar how they started and how you started, like from college. Greg and Ryan started, they met in college and whatever. I'm sure you've been on their show quite a few times.
Couple
No,
times, yeah. I'm
yeah.
dusting my podcast mic off again. We had a podcast for the banter for a while, and it became too much. When I had my son, it was just too much. But coming around, I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, just coming back into the space a little.
I remember listening. I was actually in college when I first started like listening to podcasts, Rangers podcasts. The Blue Shirt Banter one was like the first one that I would listen to. I was a sophomore in college. Now I've graduated. Around that time, I actually applied to work for Blue Shirt Banter. It didn't end up working out, unfortunately, but during the pandemic is when I started the whole like podcast thing here for Ice Cold Takes, and it was you have to start somewhere, and reading the stuff from Blue Shirt Banter is always hit me in the feels, like around the time Zuccarello got traded and stuff like that. Zuccarello was one of my favorite players. But we'll get into today's Rangers. 3-game losing streak that they had before they played Ottawa yesterday, which is on Wednesday for people listening on Saturday when this episode drops on Spotify and all your favorite listening platforms. 4-3 loss to Edmonton after leading 3-0. Did you catch that game, Joe? The game on Saturday?
I did. I was at 3-1. I turned it off to watch the finish of the Argentina-Mexico game. And then I was like, after the game ended, I said, let me just see what the Rangers ended up winning by. And it was like the last 20 seconds of the game, and they were down 4-3. And I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty much the way things have been going right now. So I missed the bad part of that game, watched the entirety of the Devils game, and obviously saw the win last night. So.
All right, so we'll talk about the Devils game first then. So the Rangers go up 2-0 in that game. They start off hot, coming off these fresh line changes. Coach Gallant puts Panarin, Hedel, and Kakko together, and immediately they strike on a goal on their first shift together. First 5 minutes of the game looked to be in the Rangers' favor. Then after that, it seemed to be all Devils until like maybe the last 10 minutes of the third period. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's broader scopes to some of this stuff, I think, that we're looking at right now. I talked about this before my wife and I just had a baby, so I haven't really been writing, but I've been redoing the notes after every game for the banter. And this is the first time I can ever remember. Normally, what happened, at least the past decade or so, is the Rangers were bad at hockey. The analytics weren't there. They were playing okay, and they were getting unreal goaltending from either Lundqvist or if it was last year, it was Shesterkin, and that was kind of masking some of the problems that they were having on generating scoring chances, playing defense. And now this year, it's like flipped on its head. Like during the AV years, I would tell people all the time, you have to play sustainable hockey. The Rangers are not playing sustainable hockey. You can't keep asking Lundqvist to be a god. You can't win by such perfect margins in the playoffs. It just doesn't work that way. And now the Rangers are generating more often than not, more scoring chances than their opponents are. They're getting terrible puck luck and they're not getting goaltending. So it's ironic that it's almost like a complete Uno reverse card where you just don't know what you're going to get. And look, I love Shesterkin. Obviously, he has not been amazing this year. I don't think he's been terrible. You look at that game against the Devils, and it's not often that you sit there and say, there's a couple of shots there that he probably should have saved. But this is such a young team, and I can't tell you they got worse over the summer. I really don't. I think Trocheck is an enormous upgrade over Strome. Outside of when Lieber Hayek is playing, this is the first time that I can't remember the Rangers icing an anchor in their defensive core. But this is still a very young team that's kind of learning their way a little bit. And closing out games is hard when you're not getting that historic goaltending that the Rangers got from Shesterkin last year. And I do think that the Rangers' run to the Eastern Conference Final kind of masked some of the issues that they had because they were getting that level of goaltending from Shesterkin. And right now, that's not there.
Right, like the 5v5 production, I think at some point this year it was like top 5 in both expected goals for and against, which is like the first time that that's been the case for the Rangers since they started tracking that stuff. I think Rob Luker pointed that out. It was very early on in the season, maybe after like 15 games, which is around the time that Gallant split up Kreider, Zibanejad, and Kako, which was doing tremendous work, just wasn't getting the puck luck that they needed to keep that line together. And I actually asked Vince Mercogliano on his podcast about if the frustrations have boiled over from not being able to put the puck in the back of the net. Now you're seeing all these basic plays that the Rangers can't even handle. They're turning the puck over way too much. Too many turnovers. I know the NHL app is probably not the best way to look at that stuff. There's probably better ways to track that, but their giveaways plus the opponent's takeaways against the Devil, 23. 23 turnovers. That's way too many. Like, I don't care who's out there. 23 is too much. It's a surefire way of getting hemmed in your own end. Kind of like the AV years. Like, you look back to that playoff series against the Senators in 2017. That was just an like absolutely awful set of events that the Rangers had to go through and all of their fans had to endure. But basic plays, I'm talking like the other team's going for a line change and they're dumping it in from the red line, and the Rangers defenders can't even handle it. They can't make the breakout pass. Neutral zone turnovers or like are the backbone of the Rangers' problems right now. I'd say, not including the game against Ottawa. But you turn the puck over too much. Like the Devils capitalized. I think they scored 3 or 4 goals off of Rangers turnovers in that game, and it's going to come back to bite you. And that's what happened against Edmonton too in the third period, especially in the last 10 minutes. Too many mistakes. And what would you do as a coach to do? Because Gallant's a player's coach. What specifically do you think he's doing? Like during in practice, what's the message to the team?
You know, it's funny because the start of the season, I think the main question that people had about Gallant specifically was you have Kako and you have Lafreniere, who obviously need pretty elevated ice time. You have Filipino, who some people thought probably should have been given the 2C role rather than bringing in Trocheck, and now you're kind of limiting his ability to grow. The Rangers, as an organization, are awesome on placing glass ceilings over their top young kids. They're amazing at it. And the first 10 games of the year, I thought Gallant did a great job getting Kako and Lafreniere ice time, giving them power play time, making, Zach Jones was getting ice time. The kids were even Hedel to an extent, as much as he could, was playing well. And, Kravtsov wasn't an issue because he was hurt. And now, as the wins weren't piling up and the Rangers were losing, even though they were playing really well, I feel like Gallant kind of reverted back to that, call it the AV style of all right, I have to do, what I know. Jimmy Vesey, he's a fantastic defensive forward. He's a great addition on the fourth line. He should not be on the first line.
Right.
Barclay Goodrow, I don't know what nice things I can really say about him. I mean, the Rangers are paying him for something that I don't think he brings to the table anymore, but it is what it is. He should not be your second line center. If you have two guys like that in your top six, it kind of makes sense that, to your point about giveaways, that the Rangers are not generating chances. They're not, holding on to the puck as much as they would like to. Those guys are getting top line minutes and they're getting, top line defensive assignments. It's hard. When Jimmy Vesey is on the fourth line, if Barclay Goodrow is on the fourth line, Ryan Reeves was out there obviously for a period of time, but remember, the Rangers basically gave away Dryden Hunt, who, again, fantastic fourth line addition. So you look at some of the decisions that the Rangers have made and who they weren't playing until Ottawa, which was, Kravtsov being in the lineup. You're almost shooting yourself in the foot to an extent. I thought the lineups were a little bit more optimized against Ottawa. And look, let's call a spade here too, right? Zach Jones hasn't been great. As much as, I love him, he should be in the lineup every day. Lieber Hayek provides nothing for the future of this team. Zach Jones does. Let him learn, let him swim. Braden Schneider, some games he looks great. Some games he doesn't look like an NHL defenseman. Again, not ludicrous for a young kid, right? They gotta work through that. Jacob Trouba's been atrocious. There's just no way around it. So absolutely. You have, three of your six defenders who on any given night, all three of them might not be firing on the right cylinders. That's a problem. So as the Rangers, who kind of rely, to your point, on that neutral zone, breakout, you have Kreider, you have Panarin, you have Adam Fox, you have guys who can either get hit in stride in the neutral zone or, in Fox's case, can bring the puck up himself. If you're not optimizing your lineup, you're going to leave holes that you're really not going to be able to fill. So I thought Gallant did a much better job against Ottawa putting things together. I don't mind the kid line. I love the kid line. It was great in the playoffs. You need Lafreniere and Kako in the top six to push Vesey and Goodrow down. Yeah. And then you need Kravtsov on that third line to push them down even further. And that, to me, is really – Vesey was still on the first line against Ottawa. I thought Kravtsov did fine. I mean, he hasn't played in 8 games. You need to kind of skate some of the junk out. But the Rangers don't have a ton of cap space. The really big cap problems that they have no movement clauses or just, absurd contract. Like Trouba isn't going anywhere. Kreider more than likely isn't going anywhere. So when you really sit down and look at it, there's not much the Rangers can do aside from kind of tweak what they have in-house. And that's kind of where we're at right now. I think if they optimize the lineup, look, to my point earlier in the show, the Rangers aren't playing bad hockey. They're not winning as much as you would like, but the underlying metrics, for the most part, are really supportive that eventually, once puck luck comes back in, I think Steve Alakette was talking about it last night, and once the goaltending kind of comes back into form, the Rangers are going to win hockey games. They don't deserve the results that they're getting right now. The problem is knowing that you can stick with it if you're Gallant and saying, okay, we're playing hockey the right way. Bounces aren't going our way. Let's do a couple of tweaks, but keep things the way they are because the wins will come. Most NHL coaches don't do that. They don't know how. They look at the result, and that's the end of it. So that's the scary part. But I think the way they played against Ottawa, that game should hopefully, Halak got his first win as a Ranger. It was the best game he's played since he's come to New York. I think, maybe that settles things a little bit. You play Ottawa again on Friday, I believe. Get a couple of wins under your belt and kind of relax a little bit, let things play out, see if some of your guys can't get hot and, take it from there.
I think it would do wonders if Kako, Hito, or Lafreniere, one of those guys, goes on a hot streak because it's everyone looks at them and says that they're not doing what they should be doing. Whether that or not that's true or not, I don't. It doesn't matter to me because they look good. Like the underlying metrics show that they're playing well. I think they're playing better than they've played it to this point in the NHL. Um, like the that top line of Kreider, Zibanejad, Kako was doing so well, except for put the puck in the back of the net. That was the biggest issue. But Kako looked the best I've seen him on that line. Whether or not you agree that his skill set fits those two guys, you could say move Kreider down and put Lafreniere there so he's on his natural side. But the fact that Kako's up there is like the biggest difference. He's got the skill. Jimmy Vesey doesn't have the skill. He had a great game last night. Great game against Ottawa. Terrific penalty killer. Great defensive forward. You said it earlier. He's a good, really, really good stick checker. Perfect fourth liner. Same thing, Barclay Goodrow. He does a lot of the things. To me, I like Goodrow because he does a lot of the things that a third or a fourth liner needs to do. It's just that it's too expensive to be on the fourth line. But if you can optimize the lineup, like you said, so that he's playing on the fourth line, maybe put him with Gauthier. Sammy Blais had an all right game last night, but I don't know how he's going to fare in the long run. But if you can optimize it so that VZ and Barclay Goodrow are on the third or the fourth line, preferably the fourth line, so that Hito and Kravtsov get their ice time and aren't out there with scrubs. That would be beneficial. I think the Rangers are still needing of one or two, maybe middle six forwards to bolster the lineup. I think that they could make a move for that actually sooner rather than later. There's a couple guys out there like Athanasiou. They need some speed in there. They're too slow, I think, in the bottom six. I think if you want to go in that chip and chase direction, you need faster skaters, kind of like Gauthier, but they don't have enough guys out there. Like Blaze, not doesn't have the speed to provide that forecheck. He's got the physicality, sure, but does he have the leg the speed to get in on the forecheck like Gauthier? I don't think so.
I mean, I'm glad you're talking about Gauthier because I think he's kind of saved the Rangers season to an extent right
I
now.
love him. I think he's I've been saying so Joe, like I've been saying that he's been a good player for a long time. Like I love what he brings to the table. People just make fun of him because he can never finish on a breakaway, but he still does all the things that you need a fourth
Yeah,
liner to do.
he as a bottom six player, and I don't like I think the term bottom six is antiquated. Like it's top nine, fourth line.
Right.
As a third liner, Gauthier brings so much to the table. And if he can find his scoring touch, which he's sort of doing, it elevates him to a whole new level. He's like a baby Kreider. He's fast. He's big. He draws a. Can I curse on the show or no? I should.
Yeah, you could. Go ahead.
He draws a shitload of penalties. Like he impacts the game when he's on the ice. And without some of what he's brought to the table, I think the Rangers would be in a lot of trouble. Because let's go back. I want to go back to one thing. You were talking about Lafreniere and Kako. And this is why it's really important to look at the underlying numbers and kind of go through some of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, this data was accurate as of last week, so it might be different. Don't crucify me if it is. I don't think a single Ranger has created more individual scoring chances than Lafreniere. Not one. So when you have somebody that's doing that, that's playing at that level, and they're not scoring, that's not, oh, they suck, they can't finish. It's, oh, eventually, right? The law of averages always win. Eventually, Lafreniere is going to get hot and he's going to start scoring. Some of that is because he's playing, or was playing on the top line. I get it, but that's what you expect a first overall pick to do. I totally understand that the numbers are not there. You're going to get shit on by opposing fan bases. I don't care. That doesn't matter. If he's developing scoring chances on his own, the way that his numbers are showing he is, that's all you can ask for. So flip it back to Gauthier, right? I don't care necessarily that he's not scoring on those breakaways because he only has one breakaway move. He gets to the dirty areas of the ice. He creates space. He's somebody that you have to worry about. back in the day, the Rangers used to just launch Kreider out of a cannon up the boards, and it would pull defensemen back, and it would open up space to get through the neutral zone. He's kind of a similar player, and as he's starting to score a little bit more, using his body, drawing penalties, I notice him almost every time he's on the ice. So having an element like that on your third line, he should never come out of the lineup. There is no better option in the organization than him that you could say, all right, let's pluck him out and put him back in. Like, removing him to put Kraftsov in would be a travesty.
Yeah.
The Rangers have a ton of bottom of the barrel players. Look, Sammy Blais, I'm not gonna trash the guy. That trade, I first of all, I love Buchnevich. I could talk about that trade forever. Buchnevich, in the year and change that he's been with St. Louis, has already scored more points than Blais will as a Ranger if he spends the rest of his career in New York. It was stupid. He's not great. He's a fourth line player. Maybe he's a winner because he won in St. Louis. Fantastic. Like, there's nothing there. Like, not that he's not a valuable or could be a valuable fourth liner. I think he's a good fourth liner. You could find guys like that a dime a dozen. You certainly don't trade point per game players for someone like that, but whatever. So I'm glad to see, like, you have to have Kraftsov and Gauthier in the lineup at the same time. You need that offense. You need Lafreniere and Kakko in your top six. And if you put guys like that with Hedl can make Gauthier, he could do some damage there. His speed helps open the ice up a little bit. Hedl's finding himself in the slot a lot more. He's going to the dirty areas. He's got a great shot. He's starting to use his vision. Like, this is what you want. Remember that when the Rangers went to the Stanley Cup final in 2014, and when they went to the Eastern Conference final last year, they had a dominant third line that they could rely on after the top six kind of eats away at the more powerful defensive units. It was Brassard, Zuccarello. Was it
Pouliot?
No, Pouliot. That's right. That was back in 2014. Last year, you had Hedl, Kakko, and Lafreniere. And it's incredible how just having a third line that can actually play hockey and has skill players on it, shelter them a little bit, they can provide that depth scoring that you need. So if the Rangers recreate that with Hedl, Gauthier and whoever, Kraftsov, whatever it may be, that's fine. That's okay. You want that. Just make sure that the other pieces, make sense too.
Right. Just don't have VZ and Goudreau in the
Correct.
top.
You don't need them, and you put them on the fourth line. If you want to do Blais, Goudreau, VC, fine. If you want to do Carpenter, Goudreau, VC, fine. But that's sort of the cohesion that you need out of your forwards. Like, that's what a Stanley Cup team has.
I think eventually we could get back to it. Coach Gallant was like very stubborn last year with his line combinations, both forwards and defenders, until they made the moves for Vetrano and Kopp and Mott. He didn't touch any. He barely touched anything. Now he's doing it a lot this year. Hopefully he could get it back to where Kakko. We talked about like how Panarin. We always wondered who's going to be his right winger. Who's going to be his right winger? Ever since we traded Buchnevich, and it created a hole in the lineup. Who's going to fill in that second line right wing spot? Lafreniere steps in and he immediately started producing in those first few games. And there was your answer right there. Like, I don't know why you would go away from that. I thought he looked great, even though it wasn't his natural side. He played great with Panarin. Maybe Kravtsov is the guy. I don't know, but it has to be one of those guys. Like, I don't need it to be Gauthier. Gauthier on the third line is perfect. And I think people, when they see like Hedl's on the third line, they think, oh, it's only 12 minutes. It's only 12 minutes or whatever. They're going to kill his development. But if it's an effective third line, doesn't necessarily mean 12 minutes. It could mean 13, 14, 15 minutes. Like, AV used Brassard, Pouliot, Zuccarello like 13, 14, 15 minutes a night back in that 2013-14 season. He used them a lot. So if you have an effective third line, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, they're still going to be used. They're going to get meaningful minutes. And like you said, shelter them so that they get the offensive zone starts against the opponent's like third pair defenders or their tired second pair, something like that.
And if they happen to be impactful enough that you can't shelter them, that they're eating minutes against the opposing team's, first or second line of defenses, Then that leaves your first or second line to be sheltered. And I personally wouldn't want Panarin or, Trocheck or Zibanejad out on the ice against not my best. So it just adds another element. I will say that Gallant is a lot better about matching up his lines than AV ever was, than David Quinn ever was.
Yeah.
So, that in and of itself helps a little bit, but you need to have the pieces in place to be able to do that. If you don't have the right parts, it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to be able to match up against opposing teams. The Rangers have the right parts. They just need to, utilize them correctly.
I also think they still need to come together as a group. Like Kravtsov is still young, and like you said, young team. He's a young player. He's still got to get adjusted. However many games he was out of the lineup for. The one game I thought he was fine, like you said. I don't know why there's such a reluctance amongst fans to not put him in. I guess it's because of what he did last year, but like you got to kind of separate your personal feelings from that and you know move on. Like this is a guy that they invested a ninth overall draft pick in. They cannot afford to have another situation where it's like Elias Anderson and they're just going to end up trading him. It's probably going to end up like that. I hope it doesn't. But what do you think of Kravtsov? Should he be playing in as many games as possible?
But I am such a firm believer. Part of the issue when you get to the professional level, and this isn't just a Rangers thing, although the Rangers happen to be really bad at it. You have coaches who are coaching for their careers, right? Gallant, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't give a shit about what the Rangers are going to look like in 10 years because he's not going to be here in 10 years. Chris Drury should, right? He should think that he's going to be there that long. But even to that level, like the general manager level, they don't think that way. So as far as I am concerned, I would play Jones every night, no matter how much he's struggling. I would play Schneider every night, no matter how he's struggling. Kravtsov, Gauthier, which last year it was a travesty that he couldn't get in the lineup. Kakko, Lafreniere, give them top 6 minutes, no matter what, whether they've earned it or not. You need to take a risk on players that you decide are the future of the organization. And if you come to a point where you have enough evidence to say that they're not, then you can disband and move on. But Jones learns nothing from sitting in the press box. Kravtsov learns nothing from sitting in the press box. Let them play. Trial by fire. There's no reason not to. Because if the gamble pays off, and it's not even a gamble, like you spent a top 10 pick on Kravtsov. Play him. Play the investment. There's no reason not to play the investment. This goes back to like trading for Emerson Issa or Emerson Edom.
Yeah.
Emerson Edom. And like you don't play him. It doesn't make sense. You have the piece. See what you have in them. Actually figure it out. Let them develop. Let them get comfortable. See what they really are. The Rangers have been more than happy to play guys like Girardi way past time that they should have. Mark Stahl way past times when they should have. Lieber Hayek way past times when they should have. I get it. I understand that urge. Tanner Glass, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
Make the investment on players that might be here in 5 or 6 years and then see what you have. Not many teams decide, you know what, my number 1 overall pick is not getting top 6 minutes. He's going to play on the third line. He's going to take a seat. He's going to figure it out. That doesn't happen. And Buchnevich is a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
Could never get into the lineup under AV. Was sitting for Tanner Glass in playoff games. Now he's a superstar in St. Louis. He's a point-per-game player. Take the risk and see what you have. There's no reason not to see what you have. So, yes, Jones is struggling. I don't give a shit. Play him. Schneider is struggling. He's struggling. They play him. They like him. He's physical. He brings, the things to the table that the Rangers really appreciate. So they're playing him. That's good. Let him develop. And if it comes to a point where you realize that they're not what you want them to be, they're not what they should be, there's nothing there, then you can move on. But this whole, go practice on your own, like Kravtsov, Ryan Carpenter, he's not going to be here next year. So what gives you the better chance to win today might not even give you the better chance to win in, January or February.
I don't even consider it a risk to put him in the lineup. It's early in the season still. Like they should get as much ice time as possible. Like I never understood why Kako sat in game 6 until I talked to Johnny Laz and he said like, think of how how much better Kako has looked now, like within the first few games of the season compared to last. Like I thought he looked great in the playoffs. He's looked even better so far this year. But that kind of move, I don't think is necessary in the regular season, especially within the first 30 games. Kravtsov, I think, needs to be in there, especially because of previous of the past. Historically, it's not been a good relationship. They need to put the trust in him. They want him in on the roster. So what purpose is it that he's in the press box? You know what I mean? Like Carpenter, like you said, I like that. Carpenter is probably not going to be here in the next year. He's on a 1-year deal. He's a fourth liner. He's nothing too special. Like yeah, I don't like to slander players and stuff, but I'm sorry, but like Kravtsov is young and has talent and was an investment that the Rangers made, and he should be in the lineup, whether he deserves it or not. Let him fail. Let him throw him under the bus. You never know. You got to see what you got in him. And I agree with you 100%.
And
Yeah.
it's not it. Just to clarify, it's not like, oh, Ryan Carpenter's not a good hockey player or not a valuable, fourth line piece, because I actually really like that signing from a depth perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's what is going to help you long term and what isn't. You will find a Ryan Carpenter tomorrow if you needed to. You can find him anywhere for a 6th-round pick, 7th-round pick for free off the waiver wire. Colorado found Dryden Hunt for free off the waiver wire. Like, those things happen. Those are not people you need to invest in. They're just not. The Rangers, they either don't do their homework or they're not. Like, Elias Anderson was a disaster. He was a reach at the time of the pick. The Rangers thought he was something he wasn't. They traded him for like a 50th overall draft pick. That's a 7th overall pick. One of the first top 10 picks the Rangers had in a while, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So you can't just keep wasting those opportunities. You can't keep wasting your 9th overall pick in Kravtsov, to a lesser extent, Kakko and Lafreniere, 2 and 1 respectively. You can't waste those things. You need to invest in those things. You need to give those things every chance to succeed that you have. If Kravtsov was a 7th-round pick, it's less excusable if he's talented and young, but it's a little bit easier to swallow than wasting, Oliver Wahlstrom was picked right after Kravtsov was. That was a big debate at the time that it happened. The Rangers loved the fact that Kravtsov did so well. He had a historic teenage season in the playoffs, I think, in the KHL. Then play the guy. Those are the things that I don't understand, that you like them enough to pluck them, to reach, to grab them, to bring them in. Nurture them when they're here. See what you have. There's no reason not to see what you have.
Yeah, it kind of seems like a disconnect, like somewhere along the line. Like I have no idea, but it's frustrating too. Like because they reach so high for him, and then it's just like he's not in the lineup. Like why? I don't want to make any conspiracies or whatever, but it's frustrating.
Yeah, answering that question, and it's not just Gallant. I mean, you're going back to David Quinn, you're going back to Alain Vigneault, you're going back to a team that traded Anthony Duclair and a bunch of other things for Keith Yandel, and then used them on the third pairing. Like the Rangers are really, really good at fucking up the things that they do. And you sit there and you're like, how is this even part of the plan to do this if you're not going to use these players? And look, you can make whatever argument you want that Kravtsov is a baby for going back to Russia and whatever the story was that Drury yelled at him or something after a game or whatever it might be. But it goes back to the point that, like, these guys have feelings. These are not robots in NHL 23. These are human beings with human emotions. If you're a 21-year-old who can go make legit money in your home country rather than playing for the Hartford Wolfpack in, the AHL, you'd probably think about doing the same thing. And if you think that you're being strung around and you're not really being, like, taken care of, why wouldn't you go back and, do what you think is best for you? Any human being yelling at Kravtsov for going back to Russia last year we'll also be the first people to tell you that, like, oh, do what's best for you. Like, if a job is screwing you around, go find a new job. It's the same thing.
Mhm.
You're a Rangers fan. He plays hockey for the Rangers, but he's going to do what's best for him. And navigating those like personal like feelings, the Rangers suck at that too.
Yeah. Yeah, they thought they had it when they thought they had it right when they brought Patrick Nemeth over just because he's Swedish, to pair him with Niels Lundqvist, and that was a disaster. They barely were able to get out from under that contract. That was, thank goodness for Arizona taking that.
I mean, look, we didn't even talk about Nils Lundqvist. Like, that's another situation where,
Yeah,
oh, there's no way he could work here. You would take him and his offense right now in a heartbeat. Now, different than Buchnevich, Drury got a first round pick. I think
yeah,
it's top 10 protected
yeah,
in what is expected to be one of the most loaded drafts we've seen in decades. That makes that a lot easier to swallow. It just is what it is. But all the people who are like, oh, the Rangers knew he was going to be really good, but never here. That's a big thing that I see on Twitter. That's a level of stupidity that I can't even articulate. Like, if he's good enough to be really good, he can be good enough to be really good here. You may need to do some things that you don't want to do to make it happen,
yeah.
but he can do what you want him to do here.
I always had a lot of faith in him. I always like when the Eichel trade rumors were going around, I was extremely, extremely reluctant in including him in a package. Uh, it's just like the Rangers, though. I think they because they've made such a long term commitment to Jacob Trouba and he's the captain. It to them, I feel like they wouldn't want to put him on the third pair and then slide Lundqvist up. I feel like that they wouldn't do that. Whether or not that should be correct or not, that's up for debate. Like I would do that. They're doing it right now. They're putting Truva on the third pair, right? Like they split up the D pairs so that he could heal. It's obvious that he's playing hurt and he's not had a good start to the season whatsoever. I hope he could turn it around, but I feel like the organization probably viewed Truba as a blocker to Nils Lundqvist and Adam Fox on the power play one. That's a big deal too.
Yeah, and look, Zach Jones has the pedigree to be an offensive defenseman. To a lesser extent, Braden Schneider has the pedigree, right, to kind of be what people think Truba should have been. It gets a little difficult when, look, Trouba didn't forget how to play hockey overnight, right? Like that just doesn't happen. And it's up to the coaching staff to get him into a position where he can be a little bit more successful, you know, for the Rangers. And if he's truly playing hurt, like Gallant says he is, and he can't sit him because Trouba won't allow that, A, don't make that public. That's insanity. B, you're the coach of the hockey team. Like, that's your job. And if Trouba is now the coach of the hockey team, let him be the coach of the hockey team. You know what I mean? It just, there's a lot of
Yeah.
very strong voices in that locker room, and that's not a bad thing. This isn't like a, fracturing of there's, people are on Trouba's side, people are on Gallant's side. It's not like that. But if you're the coach and you're saying that the captain of the team is telling you he's not pulling you out of the line, like that, it's weird. It doesn't add anything. It just causes more conspiracy theories to, your point. It's just a weird dynamic right now with the Rangers. I think a lot of people expected them to come out of the gate gangbusters like they were in the playoffs last year. Shesterkin has not been what the Rangers have needed him to be. The shooting percentage has not been there for a ton of players, which again is a good thing. Like that's going to cycle itself back up. And quite frankly, I'd rather get hot closer to the playoffs than be hot in November and cool off in,
Yeah.
April. But feels like we're getting into a little bit of a panic situation with the Rangers right now, from the organizational brass all the way down to some of the players. And that's not a good spot to be in. That's not
Right.
a place you want to be in.
Right, they're doing a lot of great things. Like I was praising them up until literally last week. I thought everything they were doing was fine. Like I love that they're dominating possession, controlling play for majority of these games. It's such a refreshing feel from years past where we're constantly hemmed into our own zone. Last year, we were winning these games by the skin of our teeth because Igor Shesterkin was standing on his head. Probably should have won MVP, if we're being honest. Like if you take him away, Rangers are competing for Slavkovsky. Honestly, last year, um, they were playing well. I thought they were doing a lot of great things, except again, put the puck in the back of the net, low shooting percentage, not capitalizing on chances. That stuff comes, like, if you could keep up whatever you're doing. Like, you have to be able to sustain that. The Rangers have the skill to do that too. Like, it's not that it's not sustainable. It is. It should be because they have Panarin, they have Zibanejad, proven goal scorers. Kreider scored 50 last year. Kako, Lafreniere that are promising. They have talent. They have the skills to be successful. You just got to give them more time to keep going. Like I know the results aren't there, and I didn't like. Honestly, I didn't like. Gallant was asked after the Edmonton game. I think Molly Walker asked him. Um, it was a question of like, okay, this is like this has happened multiple times where you've blown multi-goal leads. Like, what's the feel in the locker room? What do you need to do to fix it? And he just immediately responded, "I don't remember the other games." It's a fair question, but I don't remember the other games. But like, aren't you going to make an adjustment though? Like, where's the adjustment? And I like that he called out. I mentioned earlier about the turnovers, way too many turnovers. I like that he called that out, but I still need to see more. Like, I need to see adjustments. I need to see them stop turning the puck over. And last night was a good first step. When I checked during the second period, the Rangers had like 13 turnovers. By the end of the game, 15 turnovers. So from the like somewhere in between the second period to the end of the game, the Rangers only had two more turnovers. That was good, and they played a very good third period. Again, it is against Ottawa, so uh, I'm not going to celebrate it just yet.
Yeah, and those adjustments, you talk about Kreider scoring 50 plus last year. At some point in the reverse, you have to know what you have, right? Kreider's not a 50 goal scorer. He's not. He did it last year. I get it. But relying on him to do that again when he'd never even breached 30 in his career
Yeah.
is ludicrous. And if he does it again, great. But the expectations that you have as a coaching staff, that has to be realistic too. You can't sit there and say, all right, we can expect 50 goals from Kreider, Zibanejad. That's not how that works. You can certainly say, hey, Kreider scored 20 goals last year and his shooting percentage was 5%. His career average is 10. So I would expect him to score more goals next year. That's okay. But typically 30-year-olds don't have career years. Kreider happened to have one. Like
Yeah.
that's great. But a lot of pieces came together the right way for the Rangers last year. And expecting that to happen again in the same ways, like Shesterkin was never going to have that year again, ever. That's like a once in a life. It's really why, if you didn't appreciate Lundqvist, you should have. Like, the gold standard for goaltending is consistency. Not many goaltenders play that well for that long.
Mm.
And Shesterkin's still playing okay, just not like he was last year. You kind of have to have an idea of what you're going to do if those things don't go exactly the way they did last year. And I don't know if the Rangers have the answer to that question.
He came down to earth, Shesterkin, and it's fine. Like, that's the last person I'm going to place my
His
blame
down to
on.
earth is still better than almost anyone in the NHL.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just last year he was literally a historical goaltender. That more than likely is not going to repeat itself very often.
You just need him to be whatever he is capable, not like what he's capable of, but just be himself. Like, it's just you don't have to stop. You don't have to make the saves like last year. You don't have to do that if the rest of the team picks up their game and the drives play. Like, if you dominate possession, you just need him to come up with the saves when you need him to do it. Right? So like Halak did it last night. The Rangers kept them out to the outside, and then the pucks came in towards the end. Again, wow, a game in Ottawa where the Rangers are holding a late lead and they hold on and win. Wow, crazy. Who would have thought? Um, and they had Halak in that, but it's just they play for the goalie. I think the mistakes. Hopefully, the Rangers stick to the course. Like, get back to what they were doing really well, so that none of us are panicking. I'm kind of panic. I'm kind of on that fence there about the panic hitting the panic button. But the Rangers, you think they could turn it around?
I do. I
Yeah.
mean, and the reason I think that is because there's really nothing they need to change to an extent outside of letting the math catch up to them in a good way and making sure that they optimize their lineup. The reality of the situation is you just have to make the playoffs. Nobody expected the Rangers to make the run that they made last year. You just have to make the playoffs. And the Rangers should make the playoffs. It would be pretty catastrophic if they didn't make the playoffs. So you don't want to panic in November. I guess it's December 1st. You don't want to panic in December. You could certainly have things that you're concerned about. I would be a lot more concerned if this was happening and the underlying metrics were not there, but they are. So, at some point, the roles need to reverse a little bit. The Rangers will get hot. They'll get the puck luck that they haven't gotten the first quarter of the year, and things will, move in the right direction. But I understand being concerned, if you will, that hasn't happened yet.
They need to someone on the team. I know Fox is playing really well right now, and you could say he's on a hot streak, but when is he not? The guy's always is awesome.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I'm saying like someone else like Kako, Lafreniere, Hedel, maybe even Gauthier, they need to go on a tear. And the Rangers themselves are in desperate need of a hot streak right now. And then after that, just play consistently because I mean the results were not what we wanted in the past couple of games. The West Coast road trip, 5 of 8 points, fine. Could you have gotten like all 8 of those points? Debatable. Uh the third period effort against Edmonton, unacceptable. Can't turn the puck over that much. That was the script. That was the game plan. You go into the third period, you have a lead, 3-0. Just don't turn the puck over when McDavid and Draisaitl are on the ice, and that's exactly what they did, and it cost them. And you can't be surprised when the Rangers end up on the losing end of that game. And then New Jersey, they're one of the best teams in the league right now. You go out 2-0, and then there's like that feeling. Did you also feel it too? Like there's no way the Rangers are gonna win this. Like this is gonna close out. Like the Rangers are gonna stay 2-0. Like you think the Devils are gonna come back, right? In that game?
No, it's very rare that I didn't get. I get that feeling at times. When I got that feeling was when the Devils took the 3-2 lead after the Rangers had dominated that period. I think was it the third period? It might have been the second period.
I think the second period.
They dominated the first 10 minutes of that period. Like they got goalied a couple of times. They just played awesome. And then the Devils score on this first mistake the Rangers make the whole period.
Mm-hmm.
Right there is, okay, it's not our night. It's just not going to happen. And that's exactly what ended up happening. But, again, that happens. It just seems to be happening a lot to the Rangers right now.
Yeah. So I think they could get themselves out of a rut. You think they need to make any other moves, like any trades or anything?
I don't even, but and this is kind of going back to what I was talking about before. What can you do? The Rangers don't really have money right now to do much of anything. And the only thing that you're going to add, at least from an extent of do you need to add offense? Maybe not. You really haven't played your best offensive players in the right positions to this point, and you have some kids in the wings that should be playing more, like Kravtsov. Do you want to add to the defense in place of who? You know what I mean? You're not replacing Trouba. You don't want to touch Fox. You're not going to touch Lindgren. And are you really going to find someone with more upside than Schneider or Jones? So what do you I think the Rangers need to know what they are before they go into this and say, okay, like here are our trade targets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting it'll be an interesting trade deadline for sure. I know now that they have 22, 23, they could start the accrual process now that Reeves' cap hit is off the books. So there's going to be a number of options out there for the Rangers. I'd say defensively they could add another piece in case there's an injury or if Zach Jones really doesn't work out. I'm hoping that's not the case. I really hope he works out because I like what his skill set. I like his skill set. I like his attitude. Everything he said during preseason and stuff like that. I just hope that translates to his NHL career. Joe, it was great having you on. You have anything else to add on before I wrap it up here?
No, thanks for letting me blow the dust off my podcast mic again. It's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, man. We should do it again sometime. All right,
Absolutely. Anytime.
Ice Cold Takes fans, take it easy. We'll see you guys next week.